Imagine standing in front of your burned home on Christmas morning. The fire is gone, but what the investigators tell you next makes no sense at all. There are no bodies, no bones, no trace of 5 children, as if they were never inside that house at all. Imagine standing in front of the ruins of your home on Christmas morning. The fire is over. The smoke is fading. The nightmare should be over too. But then someone tells you something impossible. There are no bodies, no bones, no teeth, no trace that your children were ever there. That is exactly what happened to George and Jenny Sodder on December 25, 1945. 5 of their children disappeared during a house fire in West Virginia. For decades, authorities insisted the children died in the flames. But the evidence told a very different story, because the deeper the family looked, the stranger everything became. Missing ladders, disabled vehicles, cut phone lines, threats made months before the fire, witnesses claiming they had seen the children alive, and finally, a photograph that arrived more than 20 years later, a photograph that suggested one of the missing children had survived. To this day, nobody knows what truly happened. But many believe the fire was never the real crime. It was only the cover. Christmas Eve of 1945 was supposed to be ordinary. The Sodder family lived in Fayetteville, West Virginia. George Sodder was a successful businessman, an immigrant from Italy, hardworking, respected, a man who had spent years building a life for his family. Together with his wife Jenny, he was raising 10 children. The house was full of life, full of noise, full of the kind of chaos that only large families understand. That evening, the family celebrated Christmas like countless others across America. The older children stayed awake longer. The younger ones were excited for morning. Presents sat beneath the tree. The future still seemed certain. Around 10 o'clock, George and Jenny went upstairs. 5 of their children remained awake downstairs. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and little Betty. Eventually, they too went to bed. Nobody could have imagined that this would be the last normal moment the family would ever share. Just before midnight, the telephone rang. Jenny answered. A woman she did not recognize was on the other end. The caller asked for someone whose name meant nothing to her. Then came something she would never forget. Laughter. Strange laughter. Loud, unnatural, almost mocking. The caller hung up. Jenny stood there for a moment, confused, uneasy. But eventually, she returned to bed. Years later, she would still remember that call, because it felt wrong, and because it happened only hours before everything changed. Sometime after 1 in the morning, George woke suddenly. Smoke filled the house. Fire was spreading rapidly. He reacted instantly. He woke Jenny, gathered the children nearest to him, and rushed outside. Within minutes, several members of the family were safe. But then came the realization. 5 children were missing, still upstairs, still trapped. George ran toward the house. The staircase was already consumed by flames. He couldn't reach them. He searched for the ladder he always kept beside the house. It was gone. Not damaged, not burned. Gone. Desperate, he ran to his trucks. If he could drive one close enough to the house, he could climb onto the roof and reach the windows. The first truck wouldn't start. The second truck wouldn't start either. Both had been working perfectly the day before. Now, both were dead. George could do nothing except watch and scream. Witnesses later described the scene as one of the most heartbreaking things they had ever seen. A father watching his children disappear behind walls of fire, unable to save them. When the fire finally ended, investigators arrived. Everyone expected the same outcome, a terrible tragedy. 5 young victims, a devastated family. Instead, they discovered something impossible. There were no remains, no bones, no teeth, nothing. Experts later pointed out a troubling fact. House fires simply do not erase human bodies completely. Even crematoriums require temperatures far higher than those reached in ordinary house fires. Yet, the official investigation moved forward quickly. Authorities concluded that the children had died. Case closed. But George Sodder refused to believe it, and once he began asking questions, the story became even stranger. Investigators eventually discovered that the home's telephone line had been cut. Not burned by the fire, cut. Someone had physically severed it. Then came another discovery. A mechanic later examined George's trucks. Something had been tampered with. The failures were not accidental. The vehicles had been deliberately disabled. Then witnesses began coming forward. One reported seeing a strange car near the property before the fire. Another claimed to have seen children being driven away during the night. At first, these reports sounded unbelievable, but when combined with everything else, they painted a disturbing picture. What if the children had never been inside the burning house at all? What if the fire had been designed to make people believe they were? As George dug deeper, he remembered something disturbing. Months before the fire, a stranger had visited him. During a conversation about politics, the man became angry. Before leaving, he issued a warning George would never forget. The man told him his house would burn, and his children would be destroyed. At the time, George dismissed the threat. After the fire, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Was it a coincidence? Or had someone announced the crime before it happened? Years passed, then decades. Most families would have given up. The Sodders never did. They placed billboards, offered rewards, followed every lead, chased every rumor. Then, in 1967, something extraordinary happened. A photograph arrived in the mail. It showed a young man. Attached was a short message. The family immediately noticed something chilling. The man looked remarkably similar to Louis Sodder, one of the missing children. If the photograph was genuine, it meant something extraordinary. Louis had survived. Someone had taken him, and he had lived for more than 20 years after the fire. Investigators tried to trace the photograph. They failed. The sender was never identified, and the mystery grew even deeper. Today, nearly 80 years later, the case remains unsolved. Some believe the children died in the fire. Others believe they were kidnapped. Some suspect organized crime. Others suspect a personal vendetta. The truth may never be known, but one fact remains impossible to ignore. A house burned to the ground. 5 children disappeared, and no evidence proving their deaths was ever found. Perhaps the fire was an accident. Perhaps it was a crime. Or perhaps, on that Christmas night in 1945, 5 children vanished from the world while everyone was watching the flames. And if that is true, then the real mystery never happened inside the fire. It began after the smoke cleared.